Welcome to Fan Fave with Katrina. Fan Fave with Katrina. It's time to talk pop culture.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Katrina, and this is Fan Fave, the ultimate pop culture podcast for fans of all forms of entertainment. If you love music, television, film, theater, or anything in between, you're in the right place. Over the weekend, I had the opportunity to attend something super exciting. I was at the Kennedy Center for their 25th anniversary Mark Twain Prize ceremony. It's America's top prize for comedy, and I had such an amazing time being able to see the award go to Kevin Hart on Sunday. Today's episode will be all about the Mark Twain Prize, what it is and its history, and what my experience was like attending this prestigious event. But first, it's time for a pop recap. Let's talk about everything trending in the entertainment world that I have not been able to stop talking about since the last time that I spoke to you all. In the film industry, let's start with new announcements. It's been announced that a live-action movie for Popeye the Sailor Man is in the works. I will probably watch it. My parents watched the TV show when they were growing up, so I watched it a bit too because they showed it to me, so I may like this movie. But this announcement did kind of spark a reminder of a thought that I regularly have in my mind. The question, do we need a live-action version for everything? I understand why studios are doing it, and some are pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. And I'm sorry that Popeye has to be the one that I throw my shot at. It's not personal at all, especially since there literally has been a live-action Popeye movie already. It's just a thought, but there's just so many. I probably could do like a whole deep dive into how much this has been happening lately because, last week we got the poster for Harold and the Purple Crayon, and that's a book about a baby. And now they have Zachary Levi running around with a crayon and a onesie or jumpsuit. It's just a lot. Speaking of a lot, Aaron Taylor Johnson was the new James Bond for one day. And it was a very good day, that one day. But then I had whiplash when they said he has no involvement. So yeah, is there any way, I'm sure they haven't signed a contract for somebody yet. Let's just start the campaign now. The entire internet was erupting when they said that it was going to be Aaron Taylor Johnson. So it's very clear that we want that, right? The studios know we want that. Also, director John M. Chu revealed that the upcoming Wicked movie is using live vocals, and the internet is going crazy over this, but you guys, let's not act like Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo cannot sing. I know there have been historically some bad examples of live vocals in musical movies, like Cats, but I'll save my judgment. It's really up to how good the sound design team makes it anyways. It's not necessarily about the artists or the musicians in the movie. It's just the whole production of it and how it's done. And the Wicked movie, I'm sorry, I believe in the Wicked movie. It's going to be fine. While we are on the subject of movie musicals, we are getting more details, although vague, about the sequel to Joker starring Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. For those that don't know, this is a musical, and it's now being reported that the movie will include at least 15 covers of very well-known songs. This is so intriguing. I'm curious to see which ones and from what eras or styles of music. Right now, Variety is reporting that one song said to be in the movie is That's Entertainment from the 1953 musical The Bandwagon, famously associated with Judy Garland. But I guess we will have to see when the movie comes out in October how this is going to come out. While we're on the subject though, my Joker 2 fun fact is that last year they were filming the movie literally steps away from my dorm. So I went to go watch and I saw Lady Gaga filming for a scene. No music involved though. I do really enjoy a good jukebox musical. Although The Joker is the last movie that I would expect to be one, I'm still very excited. Last week, we also got a new trailer for The Fall Guy starring Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling. This movie is actually a remake of a show from the 80s of the same name. Ryan Gosling, he plays a stuntman on a movie that goes on an action adventure when the lead actor goes missing. I love action comedies, and Ryan is such a great comedic actor. I mean, we know this already. I will be sat in the theater on May 3rd when this comes out. The last piece of movie news that I want to chat about, it's about Prince. I feel like a lot has been moving lately with Prince music. We have the Broadway musical that just recently got announced, but now it's been announced that Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther and the Creed franchise, he is producing a movie inspired by the music of Prince. We don't know much about it yet. It's still very early on, but I thought I'd share this information because I think it's exciting. And like I said, I love jukebox musicals. Now, moving on to my thoughts about some recent movies, I finally saw Kung Fu Panda 4 in theaters over the weekend, and you guys, I had fun. I mean, I haven't seen a Kung Fu Panda movie in over 12 years. I did not realize that there was a third one in 2016. I don't remember, but I don't think I watched that one, which is weird because I loved Kung Fu Panda as a kid growing up. But I say that to say I can't really compare Kung Fu Panda 4 to the other movies in the franchise and say which is better than which because it's been so long since I saw the other movies. One thing that I felt while watching the movie a ton is that it felt like Spider-Man No Way Home a little bit, but also not at all. Like in concept, Kung Fu Panda 4 is very much like Spider-Man No Way Home, but in execution, it's not. I don't want to say anything without like spoiling it, but basically an evil sorceress tries to bring back Poe's former enemies, and in a way, he fights them. So in that way, yes. But anyways, I did really enjoy this movie. The plot twist was fun, even if slightly predictable. There were some good comedic moments in there, fun action, and I thought that the chameleon was an interesting villain to see play out. If you have kids, or even if you don't, I think it's valid to go see this movie. I'd recommend it. The other movie that I checked out since we last spoke is this Freaknik documentary on Hulu. For those that don't know, Freaknik was an annual spring break party / festival started by HBCU students in Atlanta, Georgia during the 80s and the 90s. I didn't know much about it, so I found the documentary to be pretty interesting. I think my biggest takeaway was just this idea of how something can start off good, like the DC Metro Club began with the festival, but then a few bad seeds can ruin it completely. With that being said, I do wish that the documentary leaned more into the negative ending to the festival. I think that whole point is a bit more compelling and just interesting to see play out from the perspective of what went wrong and how the city of Atlanta handled it. It felt like they kind of tried to squeeze that in the last 20 minutes or so, making it almost feel a bit jarring. I think in general, I just like my documentaries to have a bit more of a narrative with something thought-provoking at the end. So maybe that's why I felt that way. But this documentary, it's very much just an overview of what Freaknik was, how it got started, and why it ended. It was like they were documenting it from the perspective of needing to, so it can be remembered. And I mean, that's okay too, because I did learn a lot. Like, I totally thought the freak and Freaknik meant freaky, but it does not, or at least didn't initially. It was actually inspired by the song Les Freak by Chic. But yeah, I'd recommend checking this documentary out. It was still a very interesting story to see. Looking ahead, some notable releases for this week include the new Godzilla vs. Kong movie, The New Empire, and I'm sorry, I did not watch the first one of these. I wanted to, but never got around to it. But didn't one of them die at the end of the first one? Like it was Godzilla vs. Kong. Who won? Can someone please explain to me why they're both back? And now they're being given technology? I'm sorry, proof I have not seen any of the Kong or Godzilla movies actually. Someone tell me what order I need to watch them in. My family may go see this one in the theaters and I need to be familiar first. Also, I'm not sure if this really counts as a movie or television thing, but I'm gonna say it here. Steve Martin, he has a 2-part documentary coming out on Friday on Apple TV. I am so excited for this because I'm a Gen Z girl who was pulled into Only Murders in the Building by way of Selena Gomez, and I discovered Steve Martin and Martin Short as a result. I had seen some Steve Martin stuff before then, but I've also just seen a lot more Steve Martin stuff now, and I got to even see him host Saturday Night Live in person, and I just think he's really funny, so I can't wait for this opportunity to learn a lot more about his career with this new documentary. Moving on to theater, we have 2 new exciting pieces of Broadway news. First off, Tammy Faye is coming to Broadway. We knew this already, but now we know who, when, and where. Starting with the where, because I think it's funny that I was just talking about this last week. The Tammy Faye musical is going to the Palace Theater. So the rumors were true, they just aren't opening it. The Tammy Faye musical is set to have its first preview on October 19th, and Katie Braben and Andrew Rannells will be reprising their roles from the West End production as the evangelists Tammy Faye and Jim Baker. Also, Elton John did the music for this show, so yeah, I'm pretty sold. We also got more details about the Sunset Boulevard production with Nicole Scherzinger set to transfer from London. It's opening at the St. James Theater on September 28th, which is super exciting. Looking at this week on Broadway, we have a lot of new movement, and I mean a lot. If you are listening to this podcast the day that it comes out, Suffs, the musical, is having its first preview tonight, March 26th. Then on Thursday, March 28th, The Who's Tommy musical has its opening night, and Hell's Kitchen has its first preview. Then on Friday, March 29th, it's stacked. The Great Gatsby, The Heart of Rock and Roll, and The Wiz all have their first previews. Is anyone else as overwhelmed as I am? This is just for this week. Because then on next Monday, before our new Tuesday episode, Cabaret and Patriots have their first previews, and then there are some more openings later next week as well. Broadway is just the place to be right now, obviously, and I'll just point you all back to our recent No Gatekeeping episode where I broke down how you can get cheap tickets to see shows. Use that as your guide as you navigate this overly stacked season. I'll also post some updates on social media as these shows announce their rush and lottery policies, so make sure you're following me at FanFave Media. Moving on to television, last night the finale of The Bachelor aired on ABC. If you don't want to be spoiled, skip ahead. This is your warning 1. This is your warning 2. This is your warning 3. But Joey chose Kelsey. I was so curious what the unprecedented thing that's never been done before was going to be. And, I was so confused because I've never seen The Bachelor before. I mean, I've been talking about this. So I don't know how any of this is supposed to go. The way that live audience reacted to Daisy and Kelsey in the car together, I was yelling at my TV like, what? Literally what? But I guess the thing that's never been done on before in this show, it was actually the self-elimination at the very end. But I have to admit, I really liked the way that Daisy did it. She knew that he wasn't going to pick her. She felt it. And she made that decision for herself and maybe even took away any extra pressure that Joey still felt off of him. She accepted the fate. There was no animosity, only maturity. Although people are joking already on social media that she basically pulled a "you can't fire me because I quit" move. And that's so funny. I really do like Kelsey though. It was clear her and Joey had a lot of chemistry together, and I think that they're a really good match. So congratulations to them. They're now engaged. We also found out who the next Bachelorette will be. Jen, who I never could have predicted. Daisy actually turned it down a few minutes before it was announced to be Jen because she was not ready to jump back in to another show so soon. And then Charity Lawson came out and revealed that Jen will be our new Bachelorette. I don't think she really had a huge or notable storyline in this season of The Bachelor, but from her interview, I'm pretty interested in seeing her season. It will be my first time watching The Bachelorette, so that should be fun. And Jen is actually the very first Asian American Bachelorette, which is really cool. This is a show that definitely needs more and more diversity, and I love that they're really going in that direction. Jen's season of The Bachelorette will premiere in July. I can't wait to check it out. The next television thing that I want to talk about is Travis Kelce, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? How many times are they going to reboot this show? Not that I'm not on board. I totally am. But we just had a reboot, right? Back in 2019 on Nickelodeon with John Cena. My little cousin was actually one of the fifth graders in the cast for that one. Shout out to Amira. This Travis Kelce version, though, it's supposedly with Amazon Prime. And while it's not confirmed, the trades are reporting that this is in discussion. So we can expect an announcement soon, right? I want to see it. I would like to see it. An announcement that we did get confirmation on. Disney has given a series order for the Wizards of Waverly Place revival, with production on the first season of the show, now simply called Wizards, set to begin next month. Y'all don't understand. Wizards of Waverly Place is one of my all-time favorite Disney Channel shows. I cannot believe we're actually getting more content from it in the year of 2024. As I've talked about before, my hope is simply that it's done well. When we do get it, it's confirmed to air on both Disney Channel and Disney Plus. I am literally counting down the days, and we don't even have a release date yet, but I'm counting down imaginary days because I cannot wait. Last week, I talked about how the Peacock series Apples Never Fall was released, and I checked it out, and honestly, it was not that bad. I mean, Not even to say it was not that bad. I'm saying that because it got mixed reviews. And so I procrastinated on starting it for a while. And then when I finished the show and went back and read what those critiques were, I realized that they were things that I didn't care about. So me personally, I actually enjoy watching Apples Never Fall. A lot of the complaints have to do with how the show concludes. So I'm not going to go into it because that would be spoilers. But I did not mind the ending. This is a whodunit, kind of, more of a drama. It has a star cast that includes Annette Bening, Sam Neill, Alison Brie, and Jake Lacy, which, if nothing else, one thing Jake Lacy is going to be good at is playing a deranged character in a limited series, because he was so great in The White Lotus, and he's really great here. But this show, it's about a family. Their parents were tennis teachers. They had 4 kids, none of which became tennis stars. But the mom, played by Annette Bening, she goes missing. A few months before she went missing, however, this mysterious girl, played by Georgia Flood, had shown up to the parents' house saying she needed help, and they let her stay there. So the show basically, it goes back and forth between that time and the present day, and the mystery is basically they're trying to figure out what happened to the mom, like where is she? But let me warn you, this family is a hot mess. Like the title implies, the apple really doesn't fall far from the tree, so I'd recommend this show with 2 warnings. Prepare to dislike a lot of the characters and enjoy this show for the dramatic ride. Don't spend too much time trying to theorize because you may be disappointed by the ending like some of the negative reviewers talked about. I have to say that finale was a wild ride though. I'm telling you guys, I really enjoyed it. Looking ahead, the final season of Grownish premieres on ABC March 27th on Freeform. The historical drama starring Joey King and Logan Lerman, We Were the Lucky Ones, premieres on Hulu March 28th. On Monday, April 1st, the iHeartRadio Music Awards airs on Fox at 8 p.m., and the Season 6 premiere of All American airs on the CW, also at 8 p.m. Moving on to the music industry, my 2 favorite music releases from last week were Olivia Rodrigo's deluxe version of Guts. I think my favorite track off of that right now is So American. And then also, I really loved Hozier's new Unheard EP. Too Sweet has been constantly on repeat for me. The biggest and most anticipated new music thing coming out this week, though, is obviously Cowboy Carter from Beyonce. You guys, I cannot wait for this release. It's one of my most anticipated projects of the year so far. And as Queen Bee herself said, this is not a country album. This is a Beyonce album, and I cannot wait to see how she takes influences and makes a new sound that's all her own. Moving on to our wildcard section, Disney Legends, a Hall of Fame awarded by the Walt Disney Company to individuals who have made a significant impact on the Disney legacy, announced their class of 2024. It includes Angela Bassett, James Cameron, Jamie Lee Curtis, Harrison Ford, and John Williams. And I really love that it includes people across all types of properties. So not even just people in film and television or performers. So we also have people like Martha Blanding for Parks and Resorts, costume designer Colleen Atwood, really just a varied class. But the person I am most excited about, Miley Cyrus, is being honored this year. Miley is the youngest person in history and the first of her generation to receive the company's highest honor. And it's so deserved, you guys. I mean, it really is. She really carried a whole peak era for Disney, making so much money for the company and simply making so many of our childhoods. If it could be anyone from that era of Disney Channel, I'm glad it's her. I would choose her 100 times because she was such a big star during that time. And she's still huge now, but for Disney, especially during that time, Disney Channel, Miley Cyrus, Hannah Montana, iconic. The other wildcard thing that I want to talk about is March Madness because the college basketball tournament began since we last spoke. I'm not going to lie and say that I'm actively watching these games. I'm not. But I do like doing my little brackets. And you know, they aren't the best, but I predicted Oakland, unlike a lot of people. So I'm not that bad. I actually guessed 30 games right out of 53. If I counted that correctly. So my bracket is probably better than yours. Ha, not gonna lie. I'm just playing guessing games based off of the team colors and the mascots and which ones I've heard of. So I don't even know why I picked Oakland. I was just feeling it. So I was right. We'll check back in. Maybe I'll talk about it when we get our winners of the championship or the Final Four or whatever, however it goes. We'll talk about March Madness again a little later. and I would check back in on my final bracket predictions. I think I have University of Houston winning. They're still in it, right? Please tell me they are. I don't know. Let's move on to what I've been up to. It's cherry blossom season here in Washington, D.C., and I went downtown to check them out. They were so cute, and I posted a little video on social media, so go check out my little video from the cherry blossoms if you want to see them too. And shout out to Stumpy, the little tree that's going to get cut down, unfortunately, very soon. If you're not familiar with Stumpy the tree, go look her up on the internet. It's a really silly DC thing. The other what I've been up to thing is obviously that on Sunday I went to the Mark Twain Prize, but that's what this episode is all about, so we'll get into that in a few. Let's do our fan feature. On last week's episode, we talked about Ariana Grande albums. On Instagram, I put out a poll and asked all of you, my fellow fans of pop culture, what your favorite song on Eternal Sunshine is. Both Jaslyn and Zoe reached out to say We Can't Be Friends, Wait for Your Love is their favorite song. Brian says the title track Eternal Sunshine is his favorite. Mary says that she loves The Boy Is Mine. That's one of my personal favorites. And Miguel says True Story is his favorite. Those are all really great picks. I really don't think Eternal Sunshine has any skips. Honestly, my top 5 is constantly shifting. I feel like it's changed since we last spoke, but I'm not going to get into my rankings again. I really love that album. Make sure you're following on social media if you want to participate in our next fan poll at FanFaveMedia. That's all for this week's pop recap. Now let's get into the topic for today. On Sunday, I had the opportunity to attend the Mark Twain Prize ceremony at the Kennedy Center. This year, Kevin Hart was given the award, and he was honored by some of his closest friends and collaborators in Hollywood, some of the biggest names in comedy. The show featured Chris Rock, Jerry Seinfeld, Dave Chappelle, Jimmy Fallon, Regina Hall, Chelsea Handler, Keith Robinson, David Byrd, aka Lil Dicky, Tiffany Haddish, Nick Cannon, Nelly, the Plastic Cup Boys, JB Smoove, Robin Thicke, and music director Adam Blackstone. Today, I will be talking all about the ceremony and my experience attending. But first, let's take a step back. What is the Mark Twain Prize, you may be wondering? The Mark Twain Prize for American Humor is a comedy award named after writer and humorist from the 1800s, Mark Twain. He had a long resume, but most people know him as the writer of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. The award, given by the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C., is presented to comedians who have had an impact on American society in ways similar to Twain. The idea for the Mark Twain Prize was brought up in 1997 by playwright and administrator Murray Horwitz, who wanted it to be a comedy award on par with the Grammys, the Oscars, and the Tonys. It was developed over the process of that year, and the very first Mark Twain Prize was awarded to Richard Pryor back in 1998. Historically, the award has been given to comedians who are still alive. It's not always traditional comedians, though, or performers. Writers and producers have also received the award. I'm just going to really quickly run down the list of every trailblazer in comedy that has been presented the Mark Twain Prize since 1998. They are Jonathan Winters, Carl Reiner, Whoopi Goldberg, Bob Newhart, Lily Tomlin, Lorne Michaels, Steve Martin, Neil Simon, Billy Crystal, George Carlin, Tina Fey, Will Ferrell, Ellen DeGeneres, Carol Burnett, Jay Leno, Eddie Murphy, Bill Murray, David Letterman, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Dave Chappelle, Jon Stewart, Adam Sandler, and that brings us to this year, Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart is an American comedian and actor. In the program from the show, the Kennedy Center Board says, for more than 3 decades, Kevin Hart has inspired audiences with his iconic characters, physical comedy, and relatable narratives. Hart's work infuses social commentary with life observations to bring audiences together in laughter while encouraging us to also learn a little something about ourselves. Now, Kevin Hart, he has 8 comedy specials. He's been in countless movies and countless television shows. He has over 100 credits on IMDb and has opened 11 films at #1 at the box office. He sells out arenas on his tours. I mean, he just does a ton. I'm very familiar with a lot of his movies, some of which I grew up watching, so I was really excited that I had the opportunity to attend the Mark Twain Prize to see Kevin Hart be awarded this year. So let's talk about the ceremony. I'll start with a little bit of a recap, and then I'll also go into talking about things that may not make the broadcast, a little bit of an insider look, if you will. The show officially kicked off with Robin Thicke and Nelly. Robin Thicke, he performed a song by himself at first, which was nice, although I'm not sure what it was, so you'll see when the show streams. But then he brought out Nelly, and they sang Hot in Here together. It was immediately a party in the Kennedy Center, you guys. They had pyrotechnics, literal fire. I mean, it was, in fact, getting hot in there. By the way, while this may sound like a random combo, both Nelly and Robin Thicke were a part of Kevin's BET show, The Real Husbands of Hollywood. After that opening performance, Kevin Hart then came out and made a little entrance to take his seat on the side balcony while his friends and colleagues paid tribute to him. I just want to say this show, at a lot of times, it felt more like a roast than an award show, like a normal one. But every roast was in good fun. There were pretty much 3 running jokes of the night, I want to say. 1, Kevin's height. 2, his lack of following through or showing up when he says that he would. And then 3, the speakers often joked about being obligated to be speakers at this show. People also joked about the quality of his movies and whether he was deserving of the award, but jokes on Kevin's height were definitely the majority by a milestone. The first speaker to come out was Jerry Seinfeld, who joked about favors and how it may seem like he's there because he owes Kevin a favor. But then he said maybe it's that Kevin will owe him a favor because he's speaking at the show. But then he proclaims that there's really not that much that Kevin could do for him. And guys, it sent me so bad because he literally said, I do not want to be in Jumanji. Tiffany Haddish came out after Seinfeld, giving a speech about why she thinks Kevin is a leprechaun. And to my surprise, this one was not a height joke. She said he's a leprechaun because he's magical, because Kevin has been in her life since the early days of her professional acting career, and they worked together as she was rising in success and popularity. So she explained that she considers him to be a lucky charm in this way. But then she joked that it was excluding the last 3 years of her life because she's been dealing with a lot of problematic stuff. A lot of people that have problematic stuff going on, they were very self-aware of it. So she joked about that and was like, well, you haven't been around the past 3 years and my life has been like all this drama. So I thought that was kind of funny. Jimmy Fallon, he was next. In between a lot of the performances, they were showing us clips on the screen, a lot of compilations and mashups of Kevin Hart's big career moments. Like, they had one for his stand-up specials, and then they had one for his movies. But before Jimmy Fallon, they showed a clip from an interview Kevin had done on The Tonight Show, I'm guessing not too long ago, where they were talking about the Mark Twain Prize, and Kevin told Jimmy that he did not want him to speak at the ceremony. So Jimmy comes out with a cowboy hat on his head and a guitar in his hand, and because he can't talk, he sings. The entire song, literally the entire song, is him making fun of Kevin's height. And I mean the entire song. But there were some funny moments. My favorite line was when he said that Kevin buys his clothes from Build-A-Bear. Everyone in the audience was laughing at that point, and even Jimmy was like laughing through it. It was a pretty one-note thing, but also very funny somehow at the same time. I really enjoyed it. JB Smoove, he was next, and I thought he was pretty funny. He told a story about how he saw Kevin at a comedy club and thought he was a kid that was not supposed to be there. You guys, make sure you're tallying up these height jokes when you watch the show. He also joked about Kevin stealing jokes from him, but said that he chose not to go on Club Shay Shay to talk about it and instead decided to honor him still at this show. I really liked this one part of his speech where he basically compared comedians to cooks having their own recipe. I just thought that was such a strong metaphor for every comedian that may be following a specific method, but still they spice things up in their own little unique way. After JB Smoove, Keith Robinson came out, and I also really enjoyed his speech. He had us sing along to Anjay Crouch, but it was funny because everyone in the crowd didn't know it. It was just like, if you know this song, you know, and he joked about that, about it probably not being the right demographic of people in the audience to know, but I knew. Robinson, he did suffer a stroke, and he joked about how he called Kevin when he was in the hospital because the staff told him he had to go in the COVID section. Kevin apparently told him he was going to make a call to help him out, and Robinson said he never heard from him. So this was kind of the start of that other recurring joke that I was talking about that was pretty prominent from the night. Another interesting thing that happened during Robinson's speech is that he seemed to forget what he was saying at one point, and then he blamed it on his stroke, joking that he blames everything on his stroke. He then started talking about how someone's going to get fired for not setting him up with a teleprompter, and then he threw down his cane all dramatically. It was like a whole thing, and everyone was laughing, and I'm really curious if he really forgot or if it was part of a bit. I wasn't in a spot where I could see where a teleprompter actually was, but either way, he played it off very comically, and it was such a silly moment. After Keith Robinson, something odd happened. It was actually so funny. The whole audience was gagged. Basically, I think it was Chris Rock. He did a voiceover introduction similar to how everyone else was being introduced, but this time it was Chris Rock doing it. And he's running down all these accolades and says, even Kevin Hart doesn't even know about this surprise. Please welcome Eddie Murphy. And the whole audience literally leaped out of their seats just for Nick Cannon to be the one running out. He said that Kevin Hart came on his show, The Masked Singer, recently and messed him up, so he came to the Mark Twain Prize to throw off Kevin. He then tried to prank him again halfway through the speech by saying Angela Bassett was coming out, and I think Kevin moved a little bit for that too, because then Nick yelled, "You don't even know Angela Bassett. Like, why would she come?" After Nick Cannon came out, Chris Rock was announced, and he did in fact actually come out. This was not a prank. Chris Rock, he immediately said that was the funniest he has ever seen Nick Cannon. And you know what? I had to agree. I can't think of a lot of comedic Nick Cannon things, primarily because the most that I've ever watched anything with Nick Cannon on my screen, I think it has to be Teen Nick Top 10. I'm so serious. Like, I haven't seen much of his work. So I thought that was a very funny moment for him. Chris Rock, who was actually a speaker at the very first Mark Twain Prize ceremony for Richard Pryor, by the way. That's a really interesting fact to see how these timelines, so many years passed. I mean, that was like 25 years ago. Yeah, the 25th anniversary, 25 years ago, he was there and he's back again. He comes back, I think, a lot. This isn't like something that's new. He's spoken at a few of these. But Chris Rock, he talked about how he gave Kevin Hart advice early on, and then within 800 days, he was bigger than him. And so Chris Rock, he joked about how he doesn't like to help young comics now because of Kevin Hart's success. After Chris Rock, Regina Hall, one of Kevin Hart's longtime collaborators, spoke, joking that he's not the funniest. I believe their first movie together was Scary Movie 3 in 2003. And their most recent movie together was Me Time in 2022. Because they've worked together a ton over the years, playing love interest in a lot of their movies, Regina Hall, she joked that she's Kevin's work wife and even referred to herself as Regina Hall Hart. After Regina Hall, we had a performance from Dave Bird, aka Lil Dicky. He told the story of when he first met Kevin. He explained that he was performing a show at a pool party in Las Vegas when the crowd just immediately erupted. He said that he thought it was because they were reacting to something cool that he did, but it was actually because Kevin Hart had jumped on stage and performed with him during the entire song. And this was before they had ever met. They had never met before when this happened. He said Kevin Hart just jumped on stage and did that unprovoked. So that's when Lil Dicky, he performed the same song from the very first time that they met. It was called Save That Money. And of course, Kevin came out and danced on stage with him once again. The Plastic Cup Boys, a comedy group that has been touring with Kevin for 17 years, did a toast with the crowd and Kevin's tequila brand, which is fun. And then Chelsea Handler, she told 2 stories of Kevin Hart letting her down, including one where she wanted to go skiing in Canada during the pandemic, and Kevin told her, "I got you." She joked about how Kevin just throws that phrase around a ton, but never really follows through. Chelsea Handler, she did end on a positive note by telling a story of how Kevin did deliver for her once when she needed it, which was nice. The final speaker of the night before Kevin was awarded was Dave Chappelle, who joked about how he wished that Kevin came to his ceremony when he got the Mark Twain Prize. He talked about how Kevin's success inspired him, despite him being older than Kevin. Overall, I thought his speech was pretty good. Chairman of the Kennedy Center, David Rubenstein, presented the Mark Twain Prize to Kevin Hart. It was a very exciting moment to see. In his speech, Kevin talked a lot about how success is about the people who know you and who know what you've been through. Kevin showed massive gratitude to his mother, to God, his family, his entire team, and his friends. A funny moment, though, during this speech, it was actually when he was shouting out his friends in attendance at the special, but he skipped over J.B. Smoove and Nick Cannon. Both of them jumped up and interrupted his speech, yelling at him from their seats, and Kevin told them that he purposely left them out because J.B. Smoove claimed that he stole from him, and because Nick Cannon made him think that Eddie Murphy was actually coming out. Throughout his speech, though, Kevin talked about how he took risks and made choices with his career that he was proud of, and he was just so grateful for everyone who has stuck by him long term. If you want to check out the Mark Twain Prize and see all of these fun speeches in full, this year's ceremony will premiere on Netflix on May 11th. This is part of the new deal with Netflix, and it was so funny because I was literally sitting there last night like, they're going to have a lot of profanity to censor after this, because this show previously aired on CNN and PBS over the years, but then I remembered, I was like, oh, it's on Netflix. They're good. While you'll be able to watch the show in a couple months, there's still some stuff that you may not see on tape, like everyone hyping up Jimmy Fallon dancing before the show started. But the most notable thing that's almost certainly going to be cut, but I thought was funny, it happened at the end of Dave Chappelle's speech, because he concluded by welcoming Kevin onto the stage to receive his reward. As I mentioned earlier, the Kennedy Center chairman, David Rubenstein, he is supposed to hand out the award. So they had Kevin go back and they had to bring out a podium and the award and everything to do it correctly. And in the midst of all of that, Kevin yells out, "Can I go pee?" And so the entire show essentially took a bathroom break. And during that time, the band started playing and everyone was just vibing. Dave Chappelle was dancing and they put him up on the big screen next to Chris Rock and Jerry Seinfeld. And it was such a funny moment. But yeah, the whole night was just so much fun. I truly could not believe that I got to witness so many heavy hitters in comedy on stage all in one night. I had so much fun and was so grateful for the opportunity to be able to attend. Again, the 25th annual Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, honoring Kevin Hart, will premiere on Netflix on May 11th. I cannot wait to watch and relive the night. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, tell a friend and make sure you let me know by leaving a review and following the podcast. As a reminder, at FanFave, it's all about the love for entertainment and the joy of being a fan. FanFave is active with even more content on social media, so make sure you don't miss anything. It's at FanFave Media everywhere. So connect with me because I want to hear from you, my fellow fans of pop culture. I'll see you next Tuesday when we'll dive into another aspect of pop culture. Thanks for listening and see you soon.